Okay, so imagine this. If I dropped you right in the middle of Dan District in Taipei, blindfolded,
Mm.
and I asked you to guess where you are just from the vibe, you'd probably guess Tokyo, right? Or maybe a quieter part of Singapore.
Yeah, Tokyo is a good guess. It definitely has that polished cosmopolitan sheen.
Right. It's the high-end capital of Taiwan. You've got these luxury condos that cost more than my soul, the huge Dan Forest Park, which is basically their central
And
park.
all the sleek department stores, yeah.
To the average tourist, and let's be honest, to most locals, it feels like the finished product. Like this is modern success.
It's the shiny surface of the city.
Yeah.
The brochure version of Taipei.
Exactly. But today, we're going to ruin that brochure. Or maybe enrich is the better word.
Enrich it. I like that.
Yeah, we're going to peel back that asphalt and glass because underneath the modern city, there's a completely different story, a darker, wetter, and frankly, a much more chaotic one.
We're digging into the layers that most people just walk right over.
And to do that, we're using a framework from our sources that, I have to admit, when I first read it, it sounded a bit like a marketing buzzword. They call it sensory archaeology.
It does sound a bit pretentious, doesn't it? Like something you'd read on a placard at a gallery opening.
Sensory archaeology. I pictured myself sniffing old bricks, but the more I read into it, the more it actually it clicked.
Well, stick with it because it's actually a very practical tool. History isn't just dates and treaties. It's encoded in smells, in humidity, in the way light hits a wall.
Like terroir for wine.
Exactly like terroir for wine. The soil and the climate give the grape its flavor. Cities have a terroir, too.
And Dalian's is very specific. Our sources claim you can map the history of this district through 3 distinct smells.
Okay, I'm listening.
Wet soil, camphor wood, and hand-drip coffee.
Which sounds like a very strange scented candle collection.
I would buy that candle. But seriously, these aren't random. They represent 3 massive geological and cultural layers stacked right on top of each other.
The wet soil is the ancient past.
The camphor wood is the colonial intellectual layer. And the coffee, that's the modern, curated lifestyle we see today.
So we aren't just doing a tour, we're doing an excavation.
Exactly. So grab your shovel, or your nose, I guess, and let's start with that bottom layer, the wet soil. Because here is the first thing that just blew my mind. The name Daan is a lie.
It is a bit of a rebranding exercise, yeah. Daan translates to Great Peace. It sounds stable, it sounds dry, safe.
But the original name was Dawan,
Daan,
which means
Big Bend or Large Bay. If you strip away all the concrete, this entire district wasn't solid ground. It was a wetland, a swampy, rice paddy-filled depression in the Taipei Basin.
it's so hard to imagine now standing next to a 100-story skyscraper, but this whole place was defined by water, specifically the Lidegong Irrigation Canal.
The Ligang Canal was the central nervous system of old Taipei's agriculture. It brought water in from the river, turned that wild land into productive farmland. But here's the thing about modern urban planning.
Engineers hate wild water.
They hate it. It's messy, it floods, it smells.
And it doesn't follow a grid.
Exactly. Modern cities are obsessed with straight lines and hygiene. And as Taipei modernized, that open water became a risk, an obstacle to traffic, a breeding ground for mosquitoes. So they did what modern cities do.
They buried it?
Spatial purification, that's the term the sources use.
Sounds so clinical.
It is clinical. We sanitized the city. We turned a fluid natural geography into this rigid political grid of asphalt. We just paved over its lifeline.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting for anyone visiting Taipei, you can't just erase geology. The water is gone, but the ghost of the water is still there.
Right. If you know where to look.
Our sources point to a specific spot for this, the AGCT apartment. It's this very cool, design-focused cafe near Wenzhou Street, but we aren't sending you there just for the latte.
No, you go there for the window view. If you look out of the streets in that specific pocket of Daishan, you'll notice something weird. The grid breaks.
The streets start snaking.
Exactly. It's a glitch in the matrix. Why would a modern city have these winding, inefficient little alleys? Because the city planners couldn't completely straighten out the water rights. The roads were built along the banks of the old canals.
So the water is gone, but the shape of the water dictated the shape of the street.
I love that. Path dependence. We're driving cars on the ghosts of riverbanks.
And the irony is just, it's palpable. We paved over the water to make the city modern and efficient. But now, in 2024, where do people go when they want to escape the stress of that same modern city?
They go to those winding alleys.
Precisely. The irregularity has become a luxury. When you sit at HECT apartment and look at those curving streets, you're looking at the urban subconscious. It feels calmer because it's organic. It's that memory of the wet soil pushing back.
Okay, so that's the foundation. The mud, the water. Now what gets built on top of that?
Let's move to the second layer, the smell of camphor wood.
Ah, okay. So we're shifting from the chaos of the swamp to the discipline of the academy. We're moving into the Japanese colonial era.
Right. Daan is famous for being the brain of Taipei, and that all started here.
Correct. The Japanese government established Taihoku Imperial University, what is now National Taiwan University. And a university needs professors. Professors need housing.
And they didn't build high-rise dorms, they built these gorgeous wooden bungalows.
And they didn't use cheap pine. This was high-quality hinoki and camphor wood. Now, camphor has a very specific profile. It's not just a wood smell.
No.
It's spicy, it's warm, and it reacts with the humidity. It smells like preservation, like a library in rainforest.
And unlike the water, which was buried, some of this layer is actually still standing. If you want to physically inhale this history, the place to go is Kintian 76.
Kintian 76 is a time capsule. It's a preserved professor's dormitory that's been turned into a restaurant and cultural space. When you walk in, you have to take off your shoes. You feel the tatami, the wood grain under your feet. It's incredibly quiet.
But it's not just about the pretty architecture. The real deep dive here is about who moved in after the Japanese left.
That's the key transition. After World War II, the Japanese were gone, and the nationalist government, the KMT, took over these properties. They assigned them to the top Chinese intellectuals who came over on that Great Migration.
And one name keeps coming up, Yin Haiguang.
Yin Haiguang, a titan of liberal thought in Taiwan. He was a philosopher, a logician, and a fierce critic of authoritarianism. And you have to remember the context. This was the martial law era.
So political freedom was basically non-existent.
Right. And you have this man living in a Japanese-built house, writing things that could absolutely get him arrested.
So the house itself played a role.
A huge role.
Yeah.
These walled, garden-focused, quiet wooden houses became intellectual shelters. Outside, on the big streets, you had propaganda and political tension. But inside, under the camphor trees, there was a sanctuary for critical thinking.
That just transforms the wood from a building material into a symbol of resistance.
It really does. It created a terroir of intellect. And what's fascinating is how that exact vibe is being sold to us today.
You mean places like Sun Museum?
Yes. Sun Museum. Written with a character for forest and a little three-fit, it's a very hip, modern spot. It's not an old house, but it mimics that aesthetic perfectly. Dark wood, jazz music, ferns, curated books.
It's the intellectual shelter vibe, but you can buy a ticket to it.
It proves that this layer of history, the quiet camphor-scented study, has become a cultural aesthetic. We want to feel smart. We want to consume the atmosphere of the 1950s liberal thinker, even if we're just scrolling on Instagram.
Okay, so we've got the swamp and we've got the scholar study. Now we have to talk about the third layer. And this one. This one hits differently. It's not about nature or intellect. It's about survival and homesickness.
We are entering the flavor of exile.
This connects to the huge migration after the Chinese Civil War in 1949. You had 2 million people, soldiers, families, bureaucrats, suddenly arriving in Taiwan. They needed places to live, and Daan became ground zero for the military dependence villages, or Wangkun.
Specifically, Chengkung New Village. This was home to high-ranking officers. But don't let the rank fool you. Originally, these were temporary settlements. We're talking bamboo fences, mud walls.
Because they thought they were going back.
Next year, back in the mainland. That was the slogan. They lived in this state of suspended animation, but they didn't go back. And eventually, those temporary villages got turned into massive concrete housing projects.
If you go to Heping East Road today, you see the Chengkung public housing, these giant, imposing white towers. The bamboo is gone. The winding village lanes are gone.
Visually, the history is erased, but the terroir remains in the food. Taste is the most resilient form of memory. You can tear down a house, but it's much harder to tear down a recipe.
And the hidden gem for this is the Zongnan restaurant. It's right near the glitzy East District, but it feels like a time warp to 1955.
Oh, Zongnan is legendary. It serves mainlander home cooking. We're talking lion's head, meatballs, giant pork meatballs braised until they just fall apart. It's heavy, savory comfort food. It's such a stark contrast to the delicate cafes nearby.
But there is one tiny detail at Zhongyang that I think tells the whole story better than any history book. It's the rice.
The rice, yes.
They have an all-you-can-eat rice policy, which is great, but they offer two specific types.
They offer penglai rice and zalai rice. Now, to the casual diner, rice is rice. But historically, this is a massive distinction.
Unpack that for us.
So penglai rice is that sticky, round, short-grain rice. It was actually developed by the Japanese during the colonial era to suit their tastes. It's what 99% of Taiwan eats today.
So if you buy a bento box, it's penglai.
Right. But Zhongyang still keeps a pot of zalai rice.
Okay.
Zalai is the indigenous long-grain Indi rice. It's drier, fluffier, and crucially, it mimics the texture of rice from the Chinese interior places like Sichuan or Hunan.
So for those soldiers coming over in 1949, that sticky Japanese rice probably felt wrong.
It felt alien. It felt like colony food.
Yeah.
So keeping that pot of dry zalai rice, that wasn't a culinary choice. It was an act of clinging to home. The fact that the restaurant still offers it 70 years later, that is a profound act of cultural memory.
That's incredible. You're eating a bowl of rice, but you're tasting a geopolitical struggle.
And just outside the restaurant, inside the courtyard of that big public housing complex, there's an art piece called the Time Seed Project. It uses wood and landscape design to try and evoke the layout of the old village.
It's like a recognition that something was lost when we upgraded to concrete towers.
Something was lost when we upgraded. That feels like the theme of our next segment, because nothing represents upgrading Dagon quite like the Daan Forest Park.
Ah, the lungs of Taipei. Everyone loves this park. I love this park. It's green, it's huge, it has an MRT station that looks like a spaceship garden. But the backstory, it's violent.
It is. We tend to look at parks as these purely benevolent spaces. I mean, who could hate a park? But before 1994, this land wasn't empty. It was the most densely populated squatter settlement in the city.
We're talking about 12,000 people. Veterans, refugees, the working poor, a whole ecosystem.
And the city decided it needed a world-class park to be a modern capital. So on April 1st, 1992, the demolition began.
April 1st. That's a grim date for it.
And it wasn't peaceful. It was a massive eviction. Bulldozers versus residents. The sources call this the silent violence.
It really forces you to ask, what is the cost of the peace and quiet we enjoy today?
That's the uncomfortable question. When you go for a jog in Daan Forest Park, you are running on top of a demolished community. The park is a political landscape. It represents the state's power to reshape the city, to prioritize green aesthetics over the housing of the poor.
That puts a different spin on a picnic, but the sources do mention a way to engage with this without just feeling guilty.
Look at the MRT station, that beautiful sunken garden with the circular atrium.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
The design is intentional. It's meant to look like a scar that has been beautified. It attempts to heal the wound of the land. It's lovely, truly. But as a sensory archaeologist, you have to recognize that the foundation of this green space is displacement. It's the heartbeat of the district, but the heart had to be transplanted.
Wow. So we've gone from the swamp to the wooden dorms to the military villages to the political park. Now we arrive at the final layer, the scent of hand-drip coffee.
This brings us to the present day.
Yeah.
And we're circling back to the university area. We're talking about the evolution of youth and intellect.
We started with the Japanese university dorms, but in the 1980s, the National Taiwan University area, it wasn't about quiet study. It was about noise. The NTU main gate, built in 1931, became the backdrop for the fiercest political rallies in Taiwan's history.
This is the transition to democracy. Students were pouring out of that gate, demanding free speech, demanding the end of martial law. The intellectual shelter just spilled out onto the streets.
But today, if you go to the university area, it doesn't feel like a riot. It feels chill.
This is what we call the softening of intellect. The rebellious spirit hasn't disappeared, but it has transmuted. It moved from the street barricades into the coffee shops.
The independent bookstores, the high-end cafes.
Exactly. Look at places like C25 Cafe, or just the sheer density of indie bookstores in the alleyways. The debate culture is still there, but it's now wrapped in lifestyle aesthetics. You sit with a single origin, hand-drip coffee, surrounded by books and plants.
It's a curated experience of being smart.
Right. It's almost like the intellectualism of the area became a brand.
You can taste it.
You can literally taste it. That hand-drip coffee is the flavor of modern Daan. It's precise, it's expensive, it's global, but it relies on that local history of the area being the brain of the city. We've moved from political resistance to aesthetic consumption.
So when we look at Daan now, we're not just seeing one thing. We are seeing a stack of pancakes.
A very complicated, slightly troubled stack of pancakes.
We've got the wet soil, the swamp, the camphor wood, the colonial academy, the heavy flavors of the military villages, the exile, the green park, the political struggle, and finally, the hand-drip coffee, the modern lifestyle.
And that's the synthesis. That is the superimposed nature of the district. When you walk down the street, you are walking through time faults. You might step from a Japanese wooden house right into the site of a demolished squatter village and then into a modern luxury condo.
And this brings us back to the traveler. Why does this matter? Why shouldn't you just go shopping and take a selfie?
You can, but you're missing the texture. The why is always more interesting than the what. Knowing that a winding alley is an old river makes the walk magical. Knowing the rice in your bowl represents a migration makes the meal meaningful.
Knowing the park was a village makes the silence there feel heavier,
Yeah.
more significant.
It transforms you from a tourist into a witness. You aren't just looking at a wealthy district. You're seeing the struggle and the history that allowed that wealth to accumulate.
And that leads us to our final thought, a little provocation to take with you on your next walk through the city.
Here is the question. As we enjoy these quiet alleys, the beautiful green park, the retro nostalgic coffee shops, are we actually appreciating the history? Or are we just consuming the cultural capital that was built on displacement and struggle?
Are we honoring the past or just enjoying the aesthetic of it?
It's a question without an easy answer, but it's one worth asking every time you order that expensive cup of coffee.
And on that note, we'll leave you to chew on that or sip on that. Thanks for joining us on this excavation of Defiant. Join us next time as we peel back the layers of another hidden world.
Keep digging.